Let's talk about my new Ninja Foodi blender, cold and hot. This blender does several different things, but it also cooks. And that was the reason I got it. Just for making all the cold stuff, I would never buy this product. But for making soups and sauces and dips and fondue, which I'll never make fondue, let's be honest, and I'll probably never make dips. But soups and sauces, absolutely. It will also infuse water or alcohol if you want to make your own, raspberry vodka, for example, or black cherry whiskey or whatever. It does that. It also makes mixers, both for alcoholic drinks and non-alcoholic drinks. It makes ice cream, smoothies, nutrient extraction. You can liquefy whole fruits, veggies, and ice to make your, health drinks in the morning or whatever. The evolution of the blender. And so far, I'm really liking it. I should say that I do have some experience using Pampered Chef's hot and cold blender. I've used that 2 or 3 times to make tomato soup, and that worked really well. This product is actually quite a bit cheaper than that, and so far it strikes me as being every bit as good, if not better. One thing that's different about this one is that it has a hearty soup mode rather than a smooth soup. So when you make like tomato soup, you can put it on the smooth soup mode and it'll crush everything up and it's just smooth, creamy soup. And that's good, of course, for your sauces and Alfredo sauce especially. But if you wanted to make, chicken noodle soup, you don't want that to turn into all just mush like baby food. You want that to still have chunks and to be hearty. This has that option. Auto IQ plus heat, one-touch programs. And it has all of these programs. I'll talk about them a little later, but it also, you can just manually cook. Put water in there, and in fact earlier today I wanted some pasta with my lunch, and I cooked some pasta noodles, and it worked beautifully. So yeah, you can just manually cook things. Okay, so here it is. You've got your pitcher right here, and your pitcher lid with a removable center, like that, and your motor base. And it also comes with a handy cleaner to help you clean tough spots down there in the bottom, and a tamper. This tamper has a stopper built in so that, like if you're making ice cream or frozen drinks, thicker things, and you have to push it down off the sides, it will stop there and it will not hit the blades. So that's kind of handy. This cleaner will be handy, but this unit does have a self-cleaning mode, which is pretty darn nice, and it actually works pretty good. I don't know really what you'd ever be making where this would be necessary, but I haven't used it that much, so maybe it would be. Comes with a owner's manual, of course, and there's a little info about sauteed onions. Back here, this does have a saute setting, and it comes with a recipe book, 25 delicious recipes, not just recipes, but delicious recipes. Yeah, and you can see the ice creams and the drinks, and you can make jam out of this, or jelly, whichever. I never really know the difference between jam and jelly. Soups, fondue. It also comes with these kind of handy little cards. One is in Spanish, we won't need that. It's got grilled cheese's favorite soup, rich, creamy, and cheesy Alfredo sauce, and then on the back is those 2 recipes. And I wish they had more handy cards like this. It's perforated so you can separate these and put them away. One thing I found curious is that the recipes use milliliters and grams as opposed to, you know, ounces and cups and whatnot. So I had to get on Google and find some way to convert those to things that I understand and use. And I did that, so I kind of know the amounts I need. This recipe for tomato basil soup is very similar to the recipe that the Pampered Chef hot and cold blender comes with. And like I said, I've made that recipe I think 3 times, and it's pretty darn good. So I'm expecting this is going to be as good. And let's get to thinking about making some tomato soup here. I think is the first thing I'm going to do to demonstrate this. Okay, so here are the ingredients for the first step in this recipe. We've got 1 small yellow onion, quartered and peeled, some olive oil, some garlic. It calls for 4 cloves of garlic. I don't have any fresh garlic, so I'm just going to be substituting with this minced garlic and olive oil. And of course we got our tomatoes. But the first step just calls for olive oil, onion, and salt in the blender, and then you saute that. Here is the recipe. You can pause this video and jot those things down. Let me add everything there. You don't need to see that. I'll put everything in there. And also, the directions say place olive oil, onion, and salt in the blender pitcher, then select saute. The program will run approximately 5 minutes. And we will do that step and be right back. Okay, so I got my ingredients for the first step in the pitcher. And by the way, this is a cocktail. I won't be using that in this video. I'll be using it to make the video, but not in the recipe. So we got that first step in there. We hit the power button. It's already plugged in. It says Foodi there, and then it lights up all the options. And we're going to hit the saute button. And like I said, that's going to run for a little over 5 minutes. And it's going to heat up and blend those up, mix those up. And then we'll go to the next step. I think the purpose of this step is to heat the onions and garlic up without burning them to bring more flavors out. I guess I will see if it makes the flavor better in the end product. Okay, so the first step is done. You can see you've got a bunch of minced up garlic and onion and salt and a little oil, and the unit shut off by itself after it was done. So let me add my other ingredients, and then we'll get back into making soup. Okay, so the next step calls for 1 can or 880 grams or 5.2 cups or 31 ounces of whole peeled tomatoes. The tomatoes I have came from my garden. I cleaned them and took the cores out and just popped them in the freezer. And I think I have quite a bit more than 5.2 cups. But I'm going to try to make this recipe work with all of that. I don't want to just have a little bit left over. It also calls for 1/3 cup of heavy whipping cream, and it calls for 1 cup of chicken broth. I'm going to use Better Than bouillon with a cup of water, and 1/4 teaspoon of ground black pepper, and 1/4 teaspoon of red pepper. It also calls for 1/2 teaspoon of dried basil. I don't have any basil. I pretty much never use it, so I'm just going to omit that. And You can omit or add anything you want. You make your soup the way you like. So let me get these ingredients going in there, and depending on how much tomatoes I have, I may adjust some of these a little bit, add a little more of that, a little more of that, to make up for the fact that I think I have more than 31 ounces or 5.2 cups of tomatoes. But we'll see. I'm kind of going to adjust on the fly. Okay, so I've got my ingredients added for the second step, and what we're going to do, oh, and by the way, I am kind of pushing the limits of how much liquid you can add in here, how much stuff you can put in here. Container is marked with markings as to how many ounces and cups and whatnot, and I am a little bit over the mark there. I'm just going to cross my fingers and hope. I didn't want to just leave over a little bit of those tomatoes, because obviously they took up most of the room. But we hit the power button, it says Foodi across there, everything lights up, and we're going to hit smooth soup. And this is going to run for 30 minutes, and I won't record this whole process, but you will see that right now the heating element is start to heating up, and then it will start mixing and blending. And one thing I found that was amazing, and I haven't used this yet on tomato soup anyway, but the Pampered Chef thing, you can put whole tomatoes in there, seeds and all, and when the product is done, the soup is done, you don't see any seeds. They're gone. In fact, you don't see anything. It chops things up pretty amazing. Let's see if this one does as well as chopping things up and making it very smooth and creamy. So right now it's been in the smooth soup mode for about 7 minutes, a little less, and you can already see that things are chopped up quite a bit. I think, well, what's going on here is the heating element is heating up, starting to heat this, and I can already feel this is getting hot. And then the blender comes on just briefly every couple, 3 minutes or whatever to mix things up. Obviously I'm not going to show this whole process, but we'll see what it looks like in the end. See if it's as smooth as the Pampered Chef. I should add here too that if you feel like it's not chopping things enough in whatever you're making, whatever you're doing, there's a manual button here that you can pulse the choppers and do a little bit of that on your own. I just learned something here. Apparently you can't do that in one of your auto IQ modes. It's going to pulse on its own. This pulse button will not work in this mode. I just tried it. So I just learned something about this product. In the Pampered Chef product, in whatever mode it is, at least in my experience, you could hit their pulse button and turn the blender on. But this is going to just do everything automatically. Okay, so we're pretty close to the end of this cooking cycle, and I can see that there are still some seeds showing, some chunks. It's not exactly smooth. I'm a little concerned about that. But I think at the end, if I need to, I will just go into a different mode and manually do some pulsing of the chopper, the mixer, whatever you want to call it, the blender, and smooth that up a little bit. But I do have to say it's smelling really good, and this is pretty hot. I am gonna check the temperature at the end of this to see how hot it's getting the soup. I can tell by just watching it that it's being careful about how much it boils so it doesn't overcook and overboil and burn things. We got about a minute and a half to go and we'll see what happens. Okay, very interesting. Right after I finished that last segment, whenever it's like 3 minutes done, when it got to the last, I don't know, 45 seconds or whatever, the blender went into a mode that just chopped the crap out of that. And now you can see how smooth it is. There are no chunks visible. Oh, and that is hot. So, as it was cooking and heating up, it would just blend, you know, every several minutes or whatever to stir things around. And at the very end, it goes into a mode that went in 3 different speeds of the blending and chopped that up very smoothly. And then it ended. So let's end this. I'm going to take a temperature and then we're going to put a little bit in a bowl there and see what it tastes like, how smooth it is. Okay, I was a little bit curious about how hot this gets, so I got a temperature gauge here. I'm just going to take a reading, see how hot it gets. 204, 205, 207, and you got to be careful about the heat and steam coming out of there so you don't burn yourself. But I'm just going to take a ladle of this. It's already pretty well stirred, and I can see already that last minute and a half of mixing made this really smooth. There are no seeds visible anymore. Everything is just broken down perfectly. As you can see, when you take the lid off, you're going to get this thing here telling you that the lid is off, and eventually this will just go away. The power will go off. But I'm very impressed with, at the very end, it broke everything down. And this is so smooth. There are no seeds visible, no nothing. I mean, I can see a flake of black pepper once in a while, but otherwise it's broken down very good. And I'm going to just take a taste. This is very good. It's very hot, but it is smooth, no seeds, no chunks, no nothing. It's very smooth and very good. So, this is my video on this product. I think next I'm going to try making Alfredo sauce in this, and I also am curious to try a chunky soup or a hearty soup, like chicken noodle soup in this, that doesn't make it smooth and blend everything to a baby food consistency. And maybe I'll add that to this video later. Okay, it does that, but it's still leaving a lot of residue, and it's done I think everything down here is clean, the blades, but I am going to have to clean this and that. And I have to say the Pampered Chef unit didn't do that. It cleaned it much better. I wanted to get back to this recipe on the tomato soup. The previous recipe I'd used from Pampered Chef that came with that unit called for either a 1/4 cup of celery salt or like a half a stalk or a stalk of celery itself. And I have used celery in here, and I tried it with celery salt. I prefer just using actual celery. In a batch like this, I probably would have used 1 stalk of celery, and you just cut it in about chunks like that. You know, throw it in there at the second step with the, you know, tomatoes and everything. And I think that would make this even a little bit better. Let's take a closer look at this panel here so you can get an idea of the options. Here's your button for smoothie, frozen drink, saute, hearty soup, smooth soup, sauce and dip, ice cream, extract, mixer, water infusion, and your cocktails. And this is manual blender mode and manual cook mode. And here is a pulse button, which in certain modes, and I haven't played around with that a lot, you can just hit that and manually pulse or manually blend just a burst at a time. And then these are your settings for your cook mode. Once you hit the cook mode, those come on and you choose then either low, medium, or high. Anyway, I think it's a great unit, and it is quite a bit cheaper than the Pampered Chef. This one is actually quite a bit lighter too. The other one, the Pampered Chef blender, is quite heavy. This is much lighter. Anyway, thanks for watching.